Pretty cool. Yeah, I was actually surprised. I posted something today that I've been working on, I don't know, probably a year and a half or something. Not that
Hmm.
it's been taking me that long. It's that I started it that long ago. I posted a song structure format on my social media,
Yes. Yes, I
and it
saw
seemed
that.
like a lot of people were really interested in it. And I actually got some good feedback from various different channels. Basically, what
Cool.
it was is just a really simple chart that anybody could read. Like, you don't need to be a musician to read it, to follow
Hmm.
along
Hmm.
with it or
Yes, I
whatever.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you could follow along with it having no
Even I could.
music
Yes.
technical experience, right?
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
wouldn't be much of an issue. So it's something that I actually think, as weird as this sounds, most trained musicians don't really use and understand. And that's why I always teach it, because I don't
Hmm.
see anybody understand it. Like, even experience in, I go into a session, a recording session anywhere on the planet with any top producers or writers or whatever. Some of them get it, some of them really don't. But the ones who really get it are the ones that you typically keep seeing their name pop up time and
Hmm.
time and time again. Ryan Tedder is probably, I've mentioned him on this channel many a time, the lead singer for One Republic. Um,
Ooh,
he's like a
I know
top.
one of their songs.
You'll know many of the songs he wrote,
Hmm.
including one that you do not like with a passion.
Really? Which
Yeah,
one
it's
is
not a
that?
One Republic song though.
Oh, you.
He wrote the original song. He wrote the song Halo for Beyonce.
Oh, yeah. I don't like that one.
So I was right. So I was right.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it just
Anyway.
it's. Ugh, it sounds like
Anyway.
honking.
Yeah. Well, you should listen to the Ryan Tedder version. I prefer
I
that
know you
version.
sent it to me, and it's lovely.
I prefer that version of the song.
I do too.
Um, but the structure, it doesn't really matter what songs you use. You can pick any
Hmm.
song that you like. I typically would say either do it off the radio or do it whatever kind of song that you're trying to make or emulate.
Hmm.
That's the structure you could take. You can take the structure and nobody would have a clue that that was your base of where you took the song from. And those guys are all taking from other places anyway. Because you know the trick to writing a hit song, right? How do you write a hit song?
You told me this before, and I forget.
Rewrite a hit song. Write a hit song. Use what's already works. What is the game? What
Um,
is, I shouldn't say the game industry, but what does an unimaginative game company publisher do when they want money? They recreate something that works, right? What's
mhm,
up? What's
mhm,
up, Sylvain? Um, everybody probably wants, every company would love to have the next Roblox or the next Minecraft, and thus the stagnation of art. Exactly. Ask Jeff Tweedy. He just wrote a book on it. You know who Jeff Tweedy is?
I recognize the name.
He's the lead singer, main songwriter for the band Wilco, I believe,
Okay.
if I'm remembering this correct. And he's really like kind of a poetry lover. And I often say that songs are not poetry, but whatever. That can be argued and whatnot. Anyway, the structure is something that I think is really cool to study, and it's really easy to follow along with. Basically, all you have to do is count bars, but I think anybody can learn to count bars within the matter of minutes. Because pretty much every song you're going to be listening to is in 4/4 time or 3/4 time. If you want to study Rush and Dream Theater, it's going to be a little more complex, but the average stuff is not complicated, and that's why everybody can listen to it and everybody can consume it, right? And I'm not saying songs are all bad and they're not creative just because they use the same structure, but in this sense, you want to use the same structure because you want to give your listener something to hold on to, right? Like, there's even without going to the stagnation of art and stagnation of games, there's a lot of things that you did in the Crimson Diamond that have already been done before. Certainly,
Absolutely. Yeah.
most of the conventions, in fact, if you've
Hmm.
played, let's say you played all the King's Quest games, you would know immediately how to play the Crimson Diamond without
Right.
needing to
Hmm.
read any instructions. You wouldn't know maybe the quality of life stuff that you did to improve on the
Hmm.
text parser, but the basics of it, you just know how to play. So that's kind of, it's not necessarily, it doesn't need to be 100% innovation. You're working from like, hey, here's a little cool quality of life improvement that we did here. Oh, hey, here's something that improves here. Well, hey, this also runs on a Windows 10 machine or a Mac OS 10 without, much fuss. Just pay for it, download it, and the demo you don't even have to pay for. You can just download it and play it, right?
Yeah, I think innovation is good. I definitely think it's important and vital toward the evolution of whatever the medium might happen to be. But I've never really been one to think it is the most important thing. I've always been more into the refinement of the medium and improving it as it is without necessarily changing how something works. An example of that would be books. It's printing on paper, and when you think about innovating a book, what you can make a pop-up book, maybe you can choose your own adventure, but the essential medium of it is fine as it is, and it's a great vehicle for just about any type of story you might want to make, and just to concentrate on what those restrictions of that structure happen to be and trying to make something as well as you can within that structure. That's what I tend to go for more. I'm definitely not reinventing the wheel with the Crimson Diamond. I'm trying to make the best version of what I can imagine with those same conventions, basically. Although, as you say, there are some quality of life improvements.
Yeah, and I think the majority of games should not be reinventing of the wheel. Every once in a while, one comes along and does kind of reinvent the wheel. Tetris comes to mind. That kind of there's not really much like it beforehand. There's puzzle games, sure, but that kind of reinvented the wheel. Plenty of games come along. Minecraft, in a way, reinvented the wheel. In a way, I don't know. It's a weird. It's hard to describe what they did came before them and what they just completely innovated out of nowhere. No, but I like Cosmic Void says each creation introduces new mutations. These mutations are either embraced or they are not. If they're not embraced, it doesn't mean you're doing bad art. A study showed the Beatles' mutations were not widely embraced, and yet I believe the consensus is they wrote good music. Yes, they did. And don't apologize for rambling, because the point of this is really to provoke and promote discussion, I think.
Yeah, and I would say particularly for the genre of adventure games where it's so story-based, you don't necessarily have to reinvent what a story is to make a good adventure game. You basically have to concentrate on making a good story with a good setting and good characters and good writing. And if you can do that, I think it's not a matter of reinventing the wheel. It's a matter of, just concentrate on that. Just like movies don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like we have 3D movies now, I suppose, but no one, that really hasn't been widely embraced. The medium is just fine as it is, and people want stories, and they're always going to have an appetite for new stories, even those stories, of course, are based on stories that have come before. It's all about synthesizing it into something a little bit different, and that's always going to be something people want.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, I guess what I would like in this kind of use of structure in music is something like, I'm thinking of a talk or interviews that Dave Gilbert's done when he talks about Unavowed, and he'll mention BioWare because he loves the Dragon Age games, or at least I know he likes the early ones, and the way you can kind of switch between characters. And if you play Unavowed, that's his most recent game that he's released, that he developed. That's kind of the epitome of being able to switch around things and play as different characters and beat the game as different people. He's taking it from BioWare, but you could even say that Maniac Mansion did kind of similar things.
Sure.
Back in the day, there was different ways to solve the game. So there's a lot of cool little tweaks and changes that you can do to something that's already an established medium. Like, Dave's games are not something you'd need. It's not a steep learning curve to play one of those games, right? It shouldn't be. It should be just like, hey, here I am. Let me click through this. There's not a ton of inventory things. There's not same with Francisco Gonzalez, our buddy, Lamplight City. He was trying to do some cool little innovations here and there. And he was taking from things that he loved and combining it with maybe something a little bit new and different, and there's a lot of stuff like that. So I like the conversation.
Have a good
Uh,
night. Always time for tea.
yeah, thanks.
And
Always time for
Jim,
tea.
Jim plays games does raise a point where the conventions of movies are more standardized than games, definitely, because there's so many because games have that interactive element to them. Some games don't really even have a story at all. We mentioned Tetris, of course. So for sure, there is way more latitude in games to create other things because a movie is basically it's a story from beginning to end, and you experience it at the pace
It's
that the
linear.
director wanted you to.
It's linear. Yeah. You don't
Yes,
have a
exactly.
choice. You can't, I mean, you could pause it or slow it down, but you can't
You could
change
play it a
the,
couple times.
yeah, you can't change the experience of the
hmm
movie. You
hmm
can't change what happens in the movie.
hmm
I think that's why people love games. I think that's why it's the art form itself is kind of like the pinnacle of being able to combine all these different mediums together. You can have amazing artwork, you can have amazing music, you can have amazing interactivity, you can have
Yep.
amazing stories, you can have amazing gameplay, whatever, like stuff that amazing cutscenes. Some people, if you've ever played the Outlaws game for LucasArts, you could
No, I
literally,
haven't.
oh man, the cutscenes are unbelievable. I showed the intro, I think,
Oh, that's
right at
right.
the very beginning of some of our
Yes.
streams. If
Yes.
anybody wants to go dig through the archives, Julia, if you want to put the link up to your YouTube,
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
it'll be in
Sure.
the archive somewhere. Or you could just look up the Outlaws intro on YouTube, and it's not even the intro. It's really throughout the whole game. There's all these amazing animated cutscenes that are fully scored. So it's imagine an animated cartoon hand drawn style Western, but it's also a video game. If you haven't played it, if you're not aware of it, if you're aware of it, it's pretty amazing. So I don't know. That's a LucasArts game. Maybe they're going to make an Indiana Jones like that, animated. It didn't. The
Cool.
artwork didn't look like that from what I
No.
saw on the Bethesda teaser. It it just gave you a hint. There really wasn't much to go on there. I think when people do that, you'll like small details. The new Demon Souls remake, when you kill some bosses, you can see their soul. Yeah, that's probably just an art improvement, right? Not so much remakes, because I mean, I think you could easily make a mistake looking at the Crimson Diamond real quick, just looking at a quick screenshot or a quick clip and say, oh, this is just Colonel's Bequest, whatever, I don't need to play it. And I've heard some reviewers and some streamers and YouTubers say that. And then when they played it, they're like, yeah, this is clearly not. This is clearly very something different. While it does remind me, while it does make me feel like this isn't the same game at all. The story's not related, whatever. So anyway, that was a long rant to talk about the structure things, but that was something that I really like, and I probably will share more of that stuff because
Yeah, for sure.
it's something I feel like is lacking and it's not talked about.
Yeah, and you have so much of that knowledge that it's really cool for you to share that stuff out.
Well, I share it with my students in the class that I teach a class every Monday on music production, songwriting, and I share a lot of that stuff in that class. But we focus a lot on making music, so we made a lot of songs actually in there. We're hopefully start releasing some with all student production, student performance.
Oh, awesome.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And it's going to sound like if you didn't know it was a student or something, you wouldn't, I don't want you to be able to tell the difference between anybody else's production and what the students are doing there. So it's pretty cool. Anyway.
That actually reminds me of when I was in college for art. I don't know if when I was there, but they definitely did this at later times. They would have this event where they would have art for sale, and they wouldn't say if it was student art or the teacher's art, the professor art. And so
I
you could just
love
bid
that.
and buy anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.